Everybody's hurting. Everybody's in need. Will you be a fruitful vine or are you just a weed? Plague, pestilence, greed, and war are ravaging the earth. Seems like a pretty good time for God's people to show what their faith is really worth. Not cowering in the shadows, filled with anxiety and wondering why, but ministering to those around them with pocketbooks open and heads held high, serving others faithfully day after day, even when sometimes they have to put their own selves in harm's way. Not foolishly or recklessly, but with godly wisdom, faith, and prayer. For they realize that even in the worst of circumstances, God is still right there, still with all power, still on the throne, still reassuring his people that they'll never walk alone. Because it's hard not to be afraid when death is all around and the death toll keeps rising every day on every continent and almost every town. And then we're told to practice social distancing. Don't get too close. But God's people know that the ones we shy away from are probably the ones who need us the most. Everybody's hurting. Everybody's in need. Are you going to be a fruitful vine or are you just a weed? There are people on ventilators gasping for air. But even when they take their last breath, God is still lovingly right there. Doctors and nurses are crying out for more PPE, more gloves, face masks, and gowns. But even with this lack, they still faithfully make their appointed rounds. And politicians are praying for a swift return to the status quo, all the while with their eyes firmly fixed on what they believe to be the bottom line, making more dough. But most people just want hope, an end to the pandemic and strength to cope. Did you know that there's a swarm of locusts larger than the state of New York, just eating everything in sight, laying eggs, while millions of refugees are running from war barefooted on weary legs? No clean water, toilets, medicine, or food, just running for their lives animalistically and crude. And forest fires now burn for months, no longer weeks and days, that we seem unable to be able to put out with all our technologically advanced ways. And what about the Amazon rainforest with all the mining and cutting down of trees? And nobody seems to be concerned about the extinction of the Aboriginal people or listening to their cries and pleas. And that rainforest supplies about 1/3 of the Earth's clean air. What will we do when we strip it all bare? Another good example of the wisdom of man. Woe to the earth, for destruction's at hand. Global warming, rising seas, apocalyptic storms, and incurable disease. Everybody's hurting. Everybody's in need. Will you be a fruitful vine or are you just a weed? Plague, pestilence, greed, and war are ravaging the earth. Seems like a pretty good time for God's people to show what their faith is really worth. Blind Tony, 1016 at gmail.com.